Alright, how you doing? This is Dave from TeeVee Games, and this is a quick unboxing video because I got this in the mail today. My CollectVision Phoenix, which is an FPGA Colecovision remake released by CollectVision. This is actually the second run that I ordered about a year ago. Of course, I have a Colecovision as well, but as anyone who owns a Colecovision knows, it's a pain in the ass console to work with. Forego all that, this is HDMI. Not only that, but it also it runs Atari games off of ROMs, and it runs Super Game Module games. Also has some built-in games as well. So there's a nice little package here for $200. We had like a nasty rainstorm just this today, and the box got a little wet here. Hopefully it didn't affect anything inside, because that'll be very, very sad. They really get very thorough with the tape. Oh, packing peanuts, wonderful. Gonna have fun with that crap. Here you have an HDMI. Comes with an SD card as well. Pretty sweet. Oh, this came from DirecTV apparently. So someone's satellite dish is missing an HDMI cable, I guess. Oh, this is nice. This is designed to look like the original ColecoVision manual. Let's see what else is in here. Let's move on. Here is the actual console, the actual unit, which got a little wet. I could feel the water right there, but that's not their fault. I don't think it's gonna hurt it. We're fine. It's covered in plastic. Don't panic. But yeah, you see here, it's modeled like the original ColecoVision, right down to the rainbow font, which I used to use for my old logo, if you remember my old videos, or if you haven't, go watch them. Got a keyboard input here. It's got the two DB9 pin jacks, that's common, and also a Super Nintendo jack here. Super Nintendo's a very versatile controller. Oh, in the back we have an expansion port, that's pretty neat. HDMI cable and the barrel plug for the power. I like this. Okay, more peanuts. These are already going all over the place. Inside, that came with my edition, is a Sydney Hunter and the Caverns of Death. This will work on a regular ColecoVision as well, I assume. This is a little bit lighter than an actual ColecoVision cartridge. And as you could see, it goes right in there. All right, what else we got in this package? We have, don't hold your breath, but it's a power cord. There's an SD card slot here too, I forgot to point out. All right, that's pretty awesome. We're gonna try this out. Okay, slight change of plans. I originally wanted to capture the footage directly with my handy device here, but the Phoenix refused to produce a usable signal with it. And while you may be thinking it's just some cheap piece of junk with a poorly translated manual, I could assure you everything else I threw at this device, from both composite and HDMI sources, works just fine. After researching it, I see that this is a problem with some displays, as the ColecoVision core actually outputs 640 by 480 at 59.94 Hz. So I'll just go ahead and point the camera at the screen like someone's hastily uploaded clip of last night's controversial episode of Wheel of Fortune. We have the Phoenix hooked up to my computer monitor via HDMI, which is basically the only option. I'm not going to show you footage of that because you know what it looks like by now. While I have my Coleco Super Action Controller on hand here, initial tests have conclusively determined that it is in fact crappy. The button resistance makes it feel like one of those grip strengtheners. It might be due for a little maintenance after almost 40 years, but let's save ourselves the headache and just use a Super Nintendo controller. Through the use of the left and right shoulders, in combination with the face buttons, you could figure the keypad numbers. It's clunky, and it is not ideal for keypad-heavy games like war games, blackjack poker, or even mousetrap, but it'll work for simple menu selections. Interestingly, if you start the machine without a cartridge or SD card, it has a warning that might be familiar to those of you who have used a ColecoVision with a cartridge that refused to make perfect contact. I appreciate that attention to detail. But typically, you'll start on this screen that will let you change cores or options. The options screen is not all that robust, just a place to update cores, check the credits, and other rudimentary maintenance. Hitting the asterisk will let you change cores. It's not very useful right now, as the Atari core refuses to work on my display. And even if it did, the core requires the use of a PS2 keyboard to operate, and since it's no longer the 90s, I have none lying around. After a few seconds, the Phoenix will jump straight into the first core, which is the Colecovision. And without a cartridge in the slot, it'll go straight to the SD card where we could check out the included games. You have Armageddon, a graphically updated version of Missile Command, Tank Mission, an overhead tank and side-scrolling shooter I still haven't gotten used to, Mr. Turtle, an aquatic-based adventure, Zombie Near, a top-down exploration shooter, Light Grid Racing, a nice recreation of the light cycle portion of the Tron arcade game, Chess Challenger, I'm sure you can figure out what that is, Cindy Hunter and the Sacred Tribe, another entry in the series, Mecha 8, a simplistic story-driven vertical shooter, Spunky's Supercar, an interesting game with a weird sense of humor, Quest for the Golden Chalice, a remake of Atari's Adventure with a graphical facelift, and Princess Quest, a side-scroller very reminiscent of Ghosts and Goblins but without the rage quitting. While they're definitely hit or miss, they're nice to have included. The pack-in cartridge, Cindy Hunter and the Caverns of Death, is an amusing, level-based platformer that's not too challenging. It's not quite the killer app, especially considering you could buy this on several other platforms, but it's a nice bonus. I know I haven't gone into great details about any of the games, because while it did make the $200 price tag slightly easier to swallow, these games weren't affecting my decision one way or the other for investing in the Phoenix in the first place. So long as it plays my collection of ColecoVision cartridges without issue, then it does everything I needed to do. And good news, it does. Outside of the Phoenix splash screen replacing the traditional ColecoVision one, I didn't notice any wild differences between playing it on this device and on original hardware. I went through a large portion of my collection, attempting not only the first-party games, but also plenty of third-party titles. And they worked. Almost too well, considering I spent way too much time with some of my favorites like Burger Time and Venture. And thanks to the Phoenix, I could re-experience them anytime without distracting RF interference. In the interest of due diligence, I tried expansion module number 2, aka the steering wheel, with the Phoenix. Of course, this meant busting out one of the traditional Coleco controllers and a handful of C-cells, but it seems to work just fine. The roller controller is a bit more of a pain considering I needed to fetch that cinder block Coleco called a power supply into action to get juice to the thing. Its pack-in game Slither exhibited random teleportation glitchiness, which I read was a problem with the Phoenix. However, Centipede plays just fine. I do happen to think that this is a very good replacement for the original ColecoVision. However, there are a few negatives I do need to point out. First off, I wish CollectVision had a controller option offered alongside the Phoenix. While it wasn't a big deal for me, as I had some on hand, I think of others who may have had to head on over to eBay to have a playable piece of hardware, and not having to depend on aging peripherals is always a good thing. As I mentioned earlier, the Atari 2600 core would not work with my display. In the interest of full disclosure, I didn't spend much time troubleshooting. Some of these issues may be soon, or already have been, remedied. But for right now, it seems like there's just a lot of limitations and hurdles. Your experience may vary, but I wouldn't depend on the Phoenix for a reliable VCS gaming just yet. I wouldn't have been mad if the Phoenix had some advanced display options. The picture isn't in urgent need of CRT filters, but I kinda like them. However, more importantly, a couple of workarounds for displays that don't find the Phoenix's output agreeable would have saved some headaches. On the physical design side of things, the power and the reset buttons have this tendency to travel just far enough to get temporarily stuck beneath the case while pressing them down. A quick wiggle fixes it, but it is worth mentioning. And I know cost was mentioned as a reason, but I really wish they went with USB over PS2 input. It would have opened up more options with regards to controllers and expandability for future cores. As it is now, the lack of USB is a significant limitation. But with that said, what it sets out to do, it does quite well, as far as I could see. It serves as a more reliable and more convenient replacement for playing my ColecoVision games. Sure, it has a few extra bells and whistles, such as the aforementioned Super Game module and an expandable selection of cores. But personally, I don't see myself investing in many Super games outside the included ROMs, and short of physical cartridge support, other FPGA devices like the Mister or even regular inexpensive software emulation has me covered. And indeed, I don't think this is for everyone. Anyone who's not a hardcore ColecoVision enthusiast with an existing collection need not apply here. But there is potential in here. I genuinely hope CollectVision goes all in supporting this device for existing owners, both with regular core software updates and optional hardware add-ons. Release a physical Atari expansion that accepts cartridges and has the required switches. Maybe follow it up with an Intellivision expansion like Coleco had intended. Offer up some proprietary controllers with keypads that can handle all three consoles seamlessly. An all-in-one device that more or less accurately replaces second-generation hardware would be sweet, especially since the original hardware is over 4 decades old. We're already a part of the way there with what's in my hand, and I know it's not a trivial thing to ask of the company, considering there needs to be enough of a demand for them to even consider going through the expense. But one can dream. I have a link in the description for those who might be interested, but as of the date of this video, they are sold out of both runs, and CollectVision had mentioned that there's no plans for a third run. But who knows, with enough interest that may change. In the meantime, this was Dave for TeeVee Games. Thank you for watching.
This is the arcade experience. We're Colecovision, and we bring the arcade experience home. With arcade graphics, like Donkey Kong with multiple screens, just like the arcade game. Arcade controls, joystick, fire, and jump.